Eli Turner hadn't spoken a word in 7 years. In the quaint town of Willow Spring, nestled between the blue-hued ridges of North Carolina and the silent sweep of golden wheat fields, Eli was known as the man who never spoke, but somehow always understood. He ran the town's only art supply store, Whisper Colors, a modest shop with creaking floorboards, dusty windows, and shelves lined with brushes, sketchpads, and dreams. No one knew why he chose silence, only that he did, and that his silence wasn't empty. It was full, and then one spring morning everything changed. 12-year-old Mason Collins wandered into Whisper Colors with a nervous shuffle. His clothes hung off his small frame, and his eyes looked like they'd seen more than a boy should ever have to. His mother had died last fall. His father, when present, was distant, like a ghost stuck in the same room. Mason had stopped drawing the day his mother passed. She used to say his art made the walls smile. Now the walls of his room were bare. Eli watched the boy walk past watercolor kits and pencils without reaching for a single thing. Then Mason asked, "Do colors still matter if no one's looking?" Eli didn't answer with words. He reached under the counter, pulled out an old paints splattered box, and placed it on the glass. Inside were broken crayons, half-used pastels, and a small canvas no bigger than a book. He pushed it gently toward Mason and smiled. Mason looked at it like it was sacred. He came back the next day, and the next, and the next. Eli never said a word, but he taught Mason more than any school ever could. Through gestures, sketches, and quiet nods, he showed him how to blend sadness into beauty, how to shade light into darkness, and how silence could be its own language. Mason learned that not all things that are quiet are empty, some are overflowing. Soon Mason began bringing his finished paintings to the shop, lining them up proudly against the walls. His work wasn't flawless, but it was full of feeling, raw, honest, unfiltered, the kind that makes grown-ups stop and remember their childhood for a moment. Other kids started noticing, then adults. People started coming into the shop, not just to buy, but to sit, to breathe, to feel. Eli's silence, it seemed, was contagious, in the best way. One rainy afternoon, a stranger from Charlotte walked into the store. Polished shoes, designer coat. He was a gallery owner looking for small town art with soul. He studied the paintings on the walls, including Mason's. "Who's the artist?" he asked. Mason, who had just arrived, raised his hand quietly. The man nodded, intrigued, and the owner, Eli, stepped forward. "Ever think about selling these works in a gallery? We pay good money, real money." Eli smiled but shook his head. "I'll come back." The man said, clearly confused, "You're sitting on gold." But Eli knew better. Mason didn't need gold. He needed belonging. One evening Mason showed up with a bruise just under his eye. He tried to hide it, but Eli saw. Mason didn't cry. He just stood there, silent, angry, and trembling. "I'm gonna run away," Mason muttered. "No one would notice. Maybe not even you." Eli looked at him for a long, long moment. Then he walked to the back, opened an old drawer, and brought out a tattered journal. He placed it in Mason's hands. Inside were pages and pages of sketches. People, towns, faces. One face appeared more than the rest, a woman with gentle eyes and paint on her cheeks. Eli tapped his chest once, then pointed at the drawing. "My mother," Mason whispered. Eli nodded. Mason blinked. "She came here." His voice was almost a cry. Eli nodded again. Suddenly Mason understood. His mother had once been one of Eli's kids too, one of the ones who found color here in the silence. And now so was he. The town's spring fair came, and Mason's paintings were chosen to be showcased in the town hall. People clapped, cheered, and asked him questions. but Mason wasn't used to being seen. He froze, then Eli stepped forward and placed a hand on Mason's shoulder, and then, for the first time in 7 years, he spoke. "He paints what I never could." The crowd fell quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I stayed silent. Eli continued, his voice rough but clear, because words, they failed me when I needed them most. But Mason, he reminds me that pain doesn't have to be loud to be heard. Mason turned to Eli, eyes wide. He hugged him tightly. No more needed to be said. A week later, the shop changed. One entire wall was cleared and repainted white. Above it, a sign read, "Whispers of the heart, leave a piece of you here." And people did. Hundreds, paintings, messages, sketches, prayers, from elderly veterans to anxious teenagers, from mothers who'd lost children to fathers trying to remember how to be present. Everyone left something behind. And everyone took something with them, hope. Eli stood behind the counter, quieter than ever, but somehow louder than most. Years passed. Mason grew up and became an art therapist. He opened community centers in cities that had forgotten the color of kindness. His first center was called The Quiet Place. In every center, one thing remained constant: a wall where people could leave a piece of themselves. Back in Willow Spring, Eli's store never became a gallery. It never went viral, but it became a sanctuary. He never stopped being quiet. And yet his silence became the loudest voice in town. Final message: sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is simply be there. No noise, no advice, just the art of being quiet.